All right, TikTok. We're sitting back down to discuss some more stuff that have to do with
Land Act.
with the Land Act, and I want to start this by dealing with the question by this comment. It is very hard for me to understand how people move to another country, marry natives of that country, and not know or have researched this information. Thank you, and Gia, for sharing. Um, yeah, I'm exactly with you, Princess. I don't understand how people do it either to a certain degree. Once you hear it and you start making big moves, like buying land, like building, transferring all your wealth, you need to start asking some questions. So, one thing we did do some further research on.
Yes. So you cannot lease land. You cannot sell land. You cannot put a mortgage on the land, and you cannot transfer land.
Who cannot lease, sell,
A, s-
mortgage?
a spouse or a foreigner.
Okay. The foreigner spouse cannot do those things.
Yes.
So when you're seeing people do that, they're doing that
Illegally.
illegally. Yeah. So um you're right that we should take those moves kind of seriously. The longest you can lease land is how long, Jibu?
50 years.
And leasing, is that the same as owning?
No, it's leasing does not mean you own. It means that technically the government is like renting it to you.
Okay. And so the longest, if you wanted an extra long lease, how long could you have it?
99 years.
But for right now, most lease are what? How long?
50.
So what's the benefit of a 50-year lease, and what's the negative of it?
Well, the benefit is that you can go for renewal.
Okay.
The negative is after the second renewal, and you may not, it depends on the age that you are really. But if you go for maybe like if you're a young person like me, and maybe somebody put the land in your name and you go for renewal, that person will have it for another 50 years.
Yeah, and so this is kind of dicey because if you already are in your 50s and 60s, 70s buying land, building on it, um, if you go for a renewal, first of all, even to have the renewal, it has to be written in the details of the contract. You got to make sure, because just because the option is there, it doesn't mean that they write it in. So you have to make sure that you request that. That has to be written. But even if you get a renewal, who's to say that you'll be here? You know,
Yes.
like there's an issue of age,
Yes.
and there's an issue of coherency. How much health, how much I don't know who even do you have anybody in mind that you would pass it to have a reason to want to renew?
And
But you,
imagine if you don't have anyone at all.
which means that you need to put what in place? What is vital to have in place when you do this?
I would say a will.
You got to have a will, yeah, because you would have to want to know who you would want if you're renewing it, who's going to step forward and do that for you, or if you're renewing it, why are you renewing it? But that also means you need to consider how elaborate, how expensive of a property you build on the land, because essentially the land is going to who?
Gonna end.
And that's just by default. If you haven't put a will in place, who's going to come and renew that for you? Because there's nothing that says that you're going to pass this land down. This is not land that you necessarily are using for inheritance, unless, of course, you have some sort of bloodline.
Yes, a relative here.
Yeah, a relative here. So that's something to consider and think about. But yeah, I absolutely agree with Princess that you have to understand and do some research to understand how deeply you're getting in this. So I'm seeing some people build some really, really elaborate, beautiful buildings, but essentially they're building it to leave it behind to the locals.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? Oh, we wanted to talk a little bit about,
Your visa.
yeah, visas, because there's a new um, well, I guess it's a penalty that's come out, which is that you're going to be charged 300 CDs per month for overstay. And that penalty means that you cannot leave the country without. That's even if you visit in Togo, Benin, Ivory Coast, all of that stuff,
Any
with
other African,
nation,
yeah, nation.
without settling the bill. So there are a few people that have been here 2, 3, even 4 years of an overstay, and they have not taken care of that. It's something to look into. But yeah, they announced that $300 additional, which I mean 300 additional CDs per month for every time you've overstayed. And so these countries, like what's happening around the world, they're issuing pretty stiff penalties for folks who are overstaying, because overstaying is actually doing what?
Illegal.
Yeah, you're actually breaking the law by doing that. Now, we've all done it where we off by a month or two, but for people who are doing it for many, many months, you might want to look into having a residency or permanent residency. But even to get the residency, you would have to take care of the
Your visa.
yeah, you have to take care of that visa, that overstay, because they're going to look at all of that. So this is just some of the stuff that has to do with um, maintaining the highest level of protection in the country and being here peacefully. And anything else you want to add?
No.
Yeah. So still, buying land uh, is a possibility, but you don't own it. You have to know that you're leasing it. The terms of that lease, if you want to renew, you definitely have to have it put in the details,
Yes.
and know that the devil is
Otherwise, it's not getting renewed.
it's not getting renewed, and nobody's going to remind you to renew it. And you shouldn't function with these big ticket moves and build them without a lease. I mean, without a will.
Yes.
You definitely want to consider a will, and don't see it as a negative. See it as a positive, because you want to leave things with clarity as opposed to confusion. So somebody has suggested for us to look at up the Land Act. We did.
Yes.
It got a facelift around 2020. And if we learn anything else, will you share it with the people?
Yeah, we'll let y'all know.
Yeah, we'll let y'all know.